So let's imagine you've just sold your favourite, totally not stained, totally not moth-eaten t-shirt on eBay. And now you need to get it into the hands of the lucky buyer. You have the package in your hands and you know that it needs to reach a specific address. Now, you don't need to know exactly how the courier service works. You just need to know how to interact with the service. In this example, the postal service is a bit like an API, or application programming interface. You have a standard way of interacting with the service. This might be as simple as writing the address on an envelope, putting a stamp on it, and just popping it in a letterbox. The postal service then does all of the hard work of transporting, routing, and handling your letter, and getting it to the correct destination. APIs can also send info or data back to the system that requested it. Kind of like when the courier sends you an email to say that the parcel has been collected or delivered. In a similar vein, developers use APIs to send and receive data without worrying about the intricacies of the system that they're sending it to. An API is a reliable and standardized way of letting different softwares talk to each other. So imagine that you're managing your online vintage clothing store and you're handling all of the different customer requests. When we talk about the web, all of these requests are like the different actions that a customer can take on your website. The first one that we'll look at is the GET request. A GET request is like when a customer is browsing your store. They want to get the products, the images, the descriptions, and the pricing. A GET request is used to retrieve info from a server, like loading a web page or getting product information. The next major one would be a POST request. Let's say a customer has actually decided to buy one of your lovely vintage t-shirts. A POST is like when a customer submits that order. They'll provide their address and payment details. In software, a POST request is used to provide information to a server to be processed. For many APIs, doing GET and POST requests is enough, but there's some other methods that we do have at our disposal. The PUT request is there to update some information. For example, if your customer sends back the product because it's wrong and requests a different one. They've basically completely updated the data. Now let's say the customer likes the product but wants to change one specific piece of information, such as the colour. They're keeping the data the same, but just requesting a modification. On the web, for this we use what's called a patch request, because you're kind of putting a patch over the data that you already have. Now we decide that we don't want to sell those specific t-shirts anymore, so we throw them all onto a big fire. We responsibly recycle them. We would use a delete request to do this. Now, you can build your own APIs or use someone else's. So, what are some of the advantages of using these third-party APIs? Well, we get something called interoperability. Just like you can send your vintage clothes via the postal service, the old lady down the road can send her grandson presents, or the gentleman across town can send his aunt a birthday card seamlessly using the same services and processes. This means that different systems can interact with each other regardless of their underlying technologies. APIs also speed up development a lot because you don't have to keep starting from scratch, as somebody else has already built the tech that you want to use. You're able to bring your app to market a lot quicker. For example, I want to make a weather app. I could go and deploy a weather station at each of the places that I want to monitor. This would cost thousands of pounds, or I could just go ahead and use this weather API for free. That said, it's not all good news. APIs do have some downsides too. It can mean that you're completely dependent on third-party services. Let's say that you've set up your shop to only be able to use one courier. Then, that courier decides to triple their prices. Well, you'd either have to pay the price or rebuild your business to use a different courier. Because you don't actually own the tech that you're using, you can end up with versioning challenges. Maybe your courier has updated their terms and conditions, saying that vintage clothes now need to be labelled differently. Well, you've just got to deal with that now. So, how do you use an API? Well, of course, you can write some software or build a web page to send all of the requests that we talked about earlier. In fact, if I go and open up the developer tools on this web page, go to the Network tab, and click refresh, here you'll see all of the API requests that this website is making to different services. Alternatively, there's loads of software out there to help you do this. I use something called Postman. Now, I'll go and find the public API that I want to use, and then from Postman, I can go and send a request to the API. There we go, we have a response. So, all in all, APIs power the web, and whilst they have both advantages and disadvantages, they're a crucial technology for software engineers to understand. If you want more videos like this where I break down complicated technology topics into bite-sized chunks, using analogies and real-world examples, please consider subscribing and go out and check our life-changing software development courses where you'll learn all about APIs and much more. I've put a link in the description.